what's your Mount Rushmore, your top 4 exercises to go past failure with, and why?
Ooh, that's I'm gonna have to think on the spot, and I can only pick four, so I don't want to pick the wrong ones too early and then regret it. I would say, do they have to be specific movements? So
No,
each like,
no,
okay, so it could
whatever
be a
you want.
movement. All right,
It could be a
so
movement pattern if you want.
yeah, I'll start off with a movement pattern just because I think it's one of the rare ones that actually applies to basically every movement in the pattern. I would say just about any row. I either do partials or cheat reps, just because the rowing movement is almost always much more challenging in the contracted position compared to the lengthened position.
Mhm.
And so it just lends itself to, okay, you failed in that contracted position. Let's say you're doing a seated cable row. You failed to get, and you can just keep going. You don't get quite full range of motion, but maybe you get 100% and then 95%, 90%, and so you can keep going. Whereas something like, let's say, an overhead press, your sticking point might be like halfway up, maybe around here, somewhere around here. So it's in the middle of the movement, and so you can't really do partials as effectively. I guess you could fail and then like do a little bit of bouncy reps, but I just don't think it's particularly as effective as rows. Um, because it's not where the most challenging is in the contracted position.
Yep.
If for pressing, if pressing was most challenging at the very top, yeah, you could keep going and start getting partials, but it's not just due to the inherent biomechanics of the movement. Same thing with squats. You're going to fail somewhere in the middle part of the range of motion. No one fails a squat at the very, very, very top unless they lose their balance or something weird. And no one fails a squat at the very, very, very bottom. Usually, someone can get a little bit up before they fail the rep. And so, squats also not as partial friendly. But I would say rows in general, if it's a Helms row, if it's a chest supported row, it's a cable row, if it's a bent over row, just make sure on that one you're really bracing your core and keeping everything locked in. But just about any row, as long as you're keeping your posture, as long as you're keeping everything sort of locked in, especially in the lower back and bracing your core, yeah, I think you can go beyond failure. Not necessary for beginners. I think beginners should probably just focus on just having good technique, and they don't need to use these advanced beyond failure kind of stuff. And they also probably realistically would mess it up because they don't know how to do the movement the basic way first. So just focus on reasonable sets, focusing on your technique when you're a beginner. But when you're an intermediate and when you're a little bit more advanced, I think experimenting with either partials or cheat reps. So when you fail with full range of motion, you can either keep going with strict form and get these partials, or you can try to cheat using a little bit of momentum with the hips typically, because those are the most powerful muscles of the human body, using the hips in order to keep getting full range of motion. So you either get partials or you cheat to get full range of motion. I would say any row. So that's my first one. Any row. Second, I would say most side delt movements. So whether it's a cable lateral raise, some people say that cable laterals are most difficult in the stretch position. I actually haven't found that to be the case personally. Usually you can get at least a little bit up. It's not as extreme of a strength curve as a dumbbell lateral raise. A dumbbell lateral raise is like by far the most challenging when you're at the very top. I mean, if you make people do strict form with no cheating and pausing at the top without like shrugging up or bending the elbows, with straight arms, most people are using not much more than the pink dumbbells because it is that challenging at that top position. Whereas, I mean, you can hold as much weight as you can hold in the very bottom position. So it is a very extreme sort of strength curve. A cable lateral raise is still going to be most challenging somewhere near the top of the motion, usually. And so I would say just about any lateral raise, cables, dumbbells, any other implement, maybe a band or something, these are also very, very partial friendly because you fail to get full range of motion and then you just keep going. Or you can cheat a little bit I would say most people should start with partials before cheating because partials are actually a little bit more mentally challenging because you really have to focus on just digging into the muscle as high as you can, as far as you can, and then controlling it and resetting and going again and going again. Cheating is something I also do, but it's easier to mess up. It's easy to start cheating when you're not actually near failure, and then you're just flailing around and you're actually getting less out of the set rather than more. So I would say for most people, partials are going to be better than cheating, but I still find cheating to be very, very useful, and I will continue to do it, and it'll just be under control, and it'll be only on some movement. So rows would be number one. Any lateral will be number two. Number three, and this isn't something I do all that often, would be most calf raises. Most calf raises are by far most challenging in that very top position. You see most people do their calf raises, whether it's seated, whether it's Smith machine, whether it's putting dumbbells on the knees, anything. They don't quite get full range of motion. They don't get up on their tippy toes like a ballerina, which is technically full range of motion. They get up maybe 70, 80% of the way there. And I think you can hold so much weight at the bottom of a calf raise if you really want to, that these are also very, very partial friendly. So yeah, calf raises, I would say not necessarily mandatory to go beyond failure, but if they've plateaued, plus they're also quite resilient, calf tears, Achilles issues, as long as you work into it and you build slowly and gradually, I don't think are going to be much of an issue. And then the fourth, I would say kind of a tie, if I'm allowed to do that. I don't know.
I mean, if you want to cheat, you can go for
I'm,
it.
I'm a cheater. So yeah, let's just cheat. I would say a combination of they're very close to each other, so it's not that much of a cheat. Anything, either shrugs with the traps. Again, most people are not getting their shrugs where they're all the way up. They're doing this stuff, and then as the weight gets as they get closer to failure or beyond failure, they're using less range of motion. So I would say any shrug is very, very either failure friendly in terms of partials or in terms of cheating. You see very few people doing super strict shrugs. Usually there's some kind of lean, some kind of pop with the knees or the hips or something, or even some kind of rolling. You see very, very few people actually do ultra strict shrugs. And I think it's because they're just not particularly effective because you would have to use such light weight that down here it's just too easy. So if you're trying to work up here where it's very challenging, it's just not really challenging the muscle during most of the range of motion. And that is tied with most rear delt isolations. So whether it's again, you could do cables. I call it the thickinator, where you have two cables going from the sides, and then you're trying to squeeze back like this. Those have been excellent. I've really enjoyed those. Whether it's dumbbells and you're lying forward on a bench, that's a movement that is kind of useless if you don't go beyond failure. Because again, it's most challenging at the top, and if you're stopping when you fail in that very top part of the range of motion, you're just not getting much of a stretch. You're not really challenging the eccentric. You're not really challenging 95% of the range of motion. And so, yeah, that's one that I might go 20 reps beyond failure.
Yeah.
So I might hit failure at 10 reps and then just keep going to 30 until I'm like barely getting the weight moving.